But I would like to now welcome my next guest into the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. City Council President Luis Aponte, I believe, is around the corner.
Here I am.
He's been here before. You know
Back
the drill.
again.
He's back again with lots going on here in the city, so I appreciate your taking the time to come in today.
Absolutely. Always welcome the opportunity.
Well, you know, as we like to bring it right to the viewers, so much going on, but I did want to start with a story that Go Local did today. The revelation of Blue Cross moving 125 jobs. Can't quite see the tower through the Superman building over here.
Yep.
But from that area in which back in 2007, a TSA was given, but as you said, not necessarily per se to Blue Cross, but there's a lot of overlapping issues here, and the council is going to be taking a close look at this.
So, so we were, it's an issue that's been percolating. We've been concerned about this. We understand that the Blue Cross TSA was part of a greater TSA, but I would remind folks, there may not be specific language in the TSA that says, you know, you're going to retain these jobs. But when the Blue Cross folks came to the City Council and asked for favorable consideration, they did say, we are going to consolidate our operations. We're not only going to move jobs here, we're going to grow our job base here. And it was based upon those utterances and those proclamations for the Blue Cross folks that the City Council decided to look favorably upon this. You can't go back later and say, well, you know, we didn't really mean it. I've instructed my staff to go through the records and pull up all the pertinent information. I've asked the city solicitor to look at this. We will be taking this up on Thursday, we'll be taking this up on Thursday and sending it to the Finance Committee for further discussion. But this doesn't end here. I think it's important for people to know, you know, when you say and you make statements that you're going to do things that we expect you to do them. The only tax that we can forgive is the real estate tax, and we're a city that has that's a built community. We don't have lots of land that we can expand to the converse. We have lots of great nonprofits who are buying more and more of our buildings and taking them on off the tax roll.
Yes.
So when we make that gesture, when we approve the forgiveness or the reduction of taxes, there has to be something in return for the city. And the folks at Blue Cross at that time made it very clear that the return was that they would be retaining jobs, they'd be consolidating operations here, and then more importantly, that they'd be growing jobs.
That'd be growing jobs again. I think the number was originally 1,100 of what Go Local reported. I think that number is around the 700 mark right now, so losing 125 jobs to East Providence, big hit to Providence. And one of the things you mentioned, as you said, it wasn't written for Blue Cross, it was part of a larger organization. Does the language of TSAs, in your opinion, then need to be tightened in instances like this if they say, okay, we promise? And so there's going to be some discussion, I'm sure, about what the letter of the law and what the spirit of the law is. Is there a need to tighten up TSA language?
Well, fortunately, we've learned from our errors, and these tax stabilization agreements have evolved. They're much tighter. They're much better. We understand what needs to be in place in case an applicant doesn't adhere to the terms and conditions. This one is a fairly older one, and it was one of the original 20-year TSAs. Folks may or may not remember what was there before. It was a very difficult site to develop. The first phase was to build the parking garage and have the pads on top from which they could develop other operations and other projects. The building that was built for the Blue Cross building was in lieu of an original plan to build a hotel. The economy was not promising. They didn't build the hotel. Blue Cross stepped in to build their building there with the promise of centralizing, consolidating their workforce, and adding and growing job base there. I think it's important to note the other side of this. As they move employees out, they are attracting tenants to that space, that newly created space. And folks may or may not know that Blue Cross is a not-for-profit. So we have a not-for-profit with a tax stabilization agreement competing against other development downtown for tenant. I'm not sure that creates a balanced approach to how we deal with real estate development in the city, and I'm sure it'll be part of the conversation.
Or a level playing field, if you will. That's, I'm sure it'll be part of the conversation moving forward. But you did bring up one thing that rang a bell. It was talking about hotels, how they had looked at one at that property. One of the things we talked about this week was the demolition of the Fogarty building. Looks like there's a little hold up, but what we hear from folks is that they're probably going to resume construction shortly, dealing with a little issue with Hasbro with IT.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned, and we talked about this before, the hotels in the pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of rush to get shovels in the ground.
Yes.
Now we sort of, there's a project, the Homewood Suites development over on the kind of triangle parcel of folks know by Capitol Center as you're coming down to Kennedy Plaza. They're moving along very quickly. We've got several hotels in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
They've still got to tear this one down with the hopes that they'll be able to get something up in the fall. So talk to us about the landscape in Providence as you see hotels approach the council and say, there's a need, we need hotels, here's why. Do we need all these hotels, or as you've talked about, sort of who gets there first might be at an advantage?
There is a legitimate need for a particular segment of the hotel business, and that's extended stay, limited service rooms, and all the products that we're seeing being proposed in terms of hotel development all fit that bill. So Homewood Suites, the hotel, the Holiday Inn Express, the Prakashanti project are all trying to capture that piece of the marketplace, which to me suggests the first one that can bring and deliver their product to market will probably have a distinct advantage. So as I understand the terrain to be, this delay is problematic for this particular development. So we're hoping that they figure out what the issues are and can resume demolition and hopefully come out of the ground with a new project.
And get the big hulking building, which is halfway torn down right now,
Yeah.
right there by the convention
if
and Dunkin' Donuts Center. You kind of hope that as quickly as you can get it down would be best for the city.
It was one of the last examples of brutalist architecture, and if you thought it was brutal then, you should see it now.
It's quite brutal now. You did see the local piece of other examples of architecture around the city that
I did.
might be worth checking out. It was just Go Local's take of some levels of architecture, but again, to put the hotel in there. So many things going on with the city, but one of the things I did want to discuss with you was the Community Safety Act, passed out, amended from the council this week. Now, as recently as today, the head of the Providence Police Union came out in opposition to this amended version. Now, the whole point I thought was to get everyone sort of to the table to come to sort of some consensus. Talk to us about the continued friction.
So, this ordinance was submitted over 2 years ago, and we have been working to try and bring some consensus to this, with the understanding that we knew we'd never get 100% of the people on board. But there were some critical principles that needed to be addressed. We've over the last 6 months, have long conversations with all the stakeholders, with community folks, with law enforcement leaders, with folks in public safety, with people in the mayor's office, our policy staff, really beginning to hone down this document. And I will say it's a much different document today than it was when it was first introduced. We always understood there'd never be 100% consensus. We had a public hearing less than a week ago. I was surprised at that point that I didn't hear anything from the FOP and its leadership. I was frankly a little surprised when I got the message today that they were not supportive. But understood, we're looking to we've looked to in this ordinance to best practices around the country. Our communities are changing. They change drastically. They change in different ways. And how we police those communities and how we provide as a city public safety services has to change. We are fortunate that we have great leadership, that we have good policemen. We've not suffered the types of conflict that other communities have with their police department. But that doesn't mean we should rest on our laurels. We need to keep this dialogue moving. We need to be able to formalize how those relationships happen and what the expectations are from both sides. So I think that I understand. I'm not sure I understand why they oppose it. I don't know the specifics, but I do understand that there is a general public statement about their opposition to it. Hopefully within the next few days we'll be able to talk to them and understand a little bit more.
And talk to us a little bit about the amended changes. As you said, 2 years ago it came in one form. And again, maybe explain to viewers sort of holistically what this looks like. And talk a little bit about the changes, where we're at in 2017 versus what the community wanted in 15.
Absolutely. They're drastic changes. They're from where we started. There are things in place that have been considered tools for a long time. One of the things that has been in place was something like the gang database, as it's called. We don't understand as a public how you get on the gang database. We never understood what the policy was around that. We don't know who's on the gang database, but we think it makes sense to know how this happened. So some of the changes in here speak specifically to that sort of police tool. If a minor is put on the gang database, do his parents have a right to be notified? That is in this ordinance.
Okay.
If a person, an adult, is put in the gang database, do they have a right to appeal? Do they remain on this gang database forever? What's the impact of it? So now there's a process for people to be notified and to appeal if they were put on there for some reason that was mistaken or not legitimate. Other things that we do. Recently we passed a contract to arm all our police officers with body-worn cameras. There's a process in this ordinance that speaks to how that information is utilized, who has access to it, how it can be utilized before anyone is arrested. So there, as the tools that police officers have to do their job have evolved, we want to ensure that there is a process, a policy, a space where there can be some public dialogue about how those policies impact the communities that our police officers protect and serve every day.
And where does it stand now? What are the final steps? Full vote before the council?
It came out of the ordinance committee unanimously with 5 votes. It will be before the full council upon the rise of the regular meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
And then it requires 2 votes.
Require 2 votes, something that the community they've turned out consistently for hearings throughout the years. What do you expect in terms of, are we at that stage right now where it's the vote before the council? Do you expect a lot of folks tomorrow night?
I think a lot of folks took the opportunity to come and voice their opinions during the public hearing. But I think it's been so long in coming that we could expect a pretty diverse contingent of folks.
And one of the things that, again, is before the council and been discussed at the council, smoking ban in Kennedy Plaza. Talk with us a little bit about that. Okay.
So there is a smoking ban in Kennedy Plaza per state law. So the city a few years ago took the important step of eliminating smoking on Burnside Park. The state law eliminates the possibility of smoking inside Kennedy Plaza, which left one narrow sidewalk on the opposite side of Kennedy Plaza where people would smoke.
Yes.
It seemed not to make sense to us. The initial idea was to eliminate smoking in downtown in its entirety. We thought it was a little bit of an overkill, but what the ordinance that was passed does was also just limit smoking to no smoking in the entire area in Kennedy Plaza, which includes the sidewalk that had been left out and had impacted the owners and of those buildings, the owners of the businesses there negatively, in such that people were just going across the street and
just
smoking
to smoke there.
And it became a problem because Kennedy Plaza has its own challenges, and that became the evidence and the exacerbation of those challenges. So.
And do we have concerns, I'm sure it's been discussed, of sort of the secondhand ancillary impacts of if folks can't smoke directly in Kennedy Plaza? Are folks concerned in sort of adjacent areas that they'll be sort of ushered elsewhere? I mean, what can we do?
Well, I think the state law is pretty clear. So in the entire Kennedy Plaza near the bus stops, you can't smoke there. The city made the decision to make Burnside Park smoke-free, so you can't smoke there. So those 2 public decisions have had an impact on what's considered private property. So we've addressed that. I think people who are thinking and self-aware are going to realize, well, let me find somewhere else to smoke. And then there will be those folks who just don't care and continue to do what they do. This arms the police officers with a tool to say,
you cannot smoke here.
You can do it. Go find somewhere else to do it. You just can't do it here.
You can smoke here. So gosh, we've covered a litany of issues here between Blue Cross and TSAs, between hotel construction, the Community Safety Act, and as we just talked about, smoking at the last remaining area in Kennedy Plaza to sort of get that off the table. What else do you have on your plate moving forward, Council President?
We've got community development block grant budget that we're moving through the council. That's become an issue given what we're hearing from Washington, D.C. And the proposed budget by the president that would eliminate substantially lots of the programs that cities utilize for revitalization. So that's an issue. And we're awaiting the mayor's budget to begin those conversations. So there's a lot of stuff coming out.
Do you have a dollar amount, the CDBG funding, how dire could this be to the city?
Well, worst case scenario, it could be very significant. I mean, our allocation was a little over $4 million this year. It could be cut in half. It could be worse than that.
Yes.
We understand the president's proposed utilizing some of those funds to build the wall. We're hopeful that cooler heads prevail and that Washington understands the importance of this. That folks, Congress people represent cities throughout the country and understand that this is one of the few tools that urban areas and suburban areas have to try and rebuild and reinvest, and that it's an important tool and it's money well spent.
Well, we're going to be keeping a close eye on that, close eye on the city budget as the mayor is set to unveil it. Lots going on here in the city, but I do appreciate your coming in today to bring folks up to speed. I know you'd been in here a few weeks earlier, but we're just a couple blocks away from you, so whenever you want to come in here and bring things right to the viewers, you're certainly welcome.
Thank you.
Council President Luis Aponte, thank you for coming in today. I'll let you go around the corner over here. We'll talk soon.